Hello again, everyone. Today I'm here to start kind of a series of videos detailing a model plan and setting up your corridors, splitting up 3D design files, as well as a little bit about template design and civil cells. So in this video, we are going to basically cover the model plan and go through setting up a series of corridors in different 3D modeling files. Um, what I've done here on the far right side of the screen is set up a kind of dummy file structure that we're going to be working with here. I've created several model files that are going to kind of line up with the model plan that we have here. And the process I'm going to highlight is based on a process originally developed by Alex Badowi. So thanks to Alex for sharing that with us, and I'll link to a video of one of the presentations he did in the description. So to start off here, we're basically trying to break up our model files so that we can have multiple people working on the project at the same time. And by breaking up the file, we also reduce the processing time that we get in some of these files. So I'd like to start here in zone 0, which is typically our alignment and survey files. So you can see here I have a couple different alignment files that I've created, and I've called State Road 100 is essentially the main roadway of this project, and then I also have another ALG and RDO2 Spartan, which is going to be another road that we're doing a little bit of construction on, a little bit more than just your typical turnout construction. So that's why it has its own alignment file. Super elevations are kept in these alignment files as well. And if we switch over here to the survey file, I have some survey files in here. So there's the GDTM RD file, which has our existing ground terrain model for the entire project, as well as some other existing drainage, right-of-way, topo, existing utilities. So those are all in there as well. There would also be in the roadway an existing features file that I have not created for this project yet, but that is something that is typically created from the survey files that you have where you're modeling the depths of the various pavements, concrete, sidewalk, curb, all those sorts of structures. So that's something else that you would do outside of your normal modeling. So now that we get into the model files, we're going to break up the files based on their zone and usage. And like I said before, multiple people working on the model, and we're going to speed up our processing times. I won't read through all of this, but you can take a look at it. One of the things I like to cover is I have a couple Z model files in here, so you'll see the Z pavement projected. This isn't a model file that's going to be used to create the final model, but it's something I'm going to use to facilitate the creation of some other model files, typically your medians and your side streets and things of that nature. So we'll get right into it. Now this won't match up exactly with what I have over here. This is a model plan I've created for a different project, but I just kind of wanted to run through this and compare it to the sample project that we're going to cover. So in zone 1 we'll have our travel lane pavement corridors, and this is where you're going to place the corridor along the CL center line for the travel lanes only. And so you can see I have my pavement model file here as well as my pavement projected model file. Next we're going to move to zone 2, which is our median corridors and detail modeling, and I just like to say this anything between the two PGLs. Obviously if you have a crowned roadway you won't have a zone 2, so you can eliminate that, but I have a model 01.2 over here for my median. And then we'll get into zone 3, which is corridors requiring end conditions. So end conditions are the things that take the most time to process. So we really want to make sure we split those out and make them have their own file. So I've split them up into left and right files, and actually in this project I have here, I split the right up into two different files because I had two different types of end conditions, or I had kind of a rural section and an urban section, so I wanted to split those up. It was more logical that way. But typically you're going to at least have an end condition left and an end condition right. So now we've gotten into our 1.3 files, and so we got our left and right end conditions. And as we move into zone 4, this is where all of our detail modeling takes place. So that could be anything like a side street turnout, a driveway, curb ramps, anything like that that requires a little more detail modeling. So I've made a rocket turnout here, which is just going to be a side street. We're going to do some curb returns and go down the side street a little bit to kind of harmonize everything, as well as a driveway's left. So we'll be placing a driveway or two on the left-hand side of the road. And that is pretty much it for 4. I have a big list of things that I had in 4 there. Zone 5 is something we're not really going to cover here because this is kind of something you do at the very end of the project. You might have a model file for the top mesh and a model file for the bottom mesh, and I actually created another zone 6 here, which is my motif file, where I bring all the model files I've created and bring those together so that when I cut my cross sections, that's the only file that I'm referencing when I cut my cross sections. So I can set up that file with all the appropriate levels turned on, all the appropriate models attached, so that I get a nice clean section cut through all of those. So just to kind of wrap up everything we've said here, I'm kind of going to go back to something that Alex said, and he has this philosophy of Legos where you're kind of putting these different pieces together. So with all of that said, we'll move on to look at some of the CAD files that we've created, and I'll show you how we're going to create our corridors in there and bring all of these model files together to create one complete 3D model. Alright, now we're here in our first model file. I'm going to start out doing the pavement for the State Road 100 job here that I've created. And I've already gone ahead and created an alignment that has an active profile on it. And I've set up some limits for where I want to place this corridor. I'm just going to do kind of like a little snapshot of this project. So we'll have some pavement, a side street, a median opening, and maybe we can find a place to put a driveway or something like that. So what I'm going to start with first is creating a corridor along my center line. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and create corridor. Right click from my active profile, and I'm going to call this SR100 travel lanes. Now it's asking me to pick a template, so I'm going to go find my Pavement Typical 1 template. This is a template I've already created for this job, and obviously you can see it has pavement on both sides of the road. And once I place this, I'll go and do a quick intro of kind of what the template entails. So now that I've got this, I'm going to turn my AccuDraw off and click to select that template, and I'm going to snap to my limits because that's how far I want that corridor to go. We'll use a 10 drop interval, and we're going to place that corridor. So this has already been set to active, so in the FDOT Connect workspace you can hit F4 to change your view to like this 4 view, which I kind of like using. So that'll set up your default view, your default 3D view, and 2 views down here that you can use to kind of do whatever you want. Typically I'll come over here, and when I'm doing my detail modeling, I'll have this as my profile view, and then we can also come over here and set up a cross-section view, dynamic cross-section view. So I really don't like the white background. So one thing I do is change this to shadows. Turn the default lighting all the way up. Come in here to shadows and just change this to somewhere around 140. That kind of makes it much nicer. So a little bit more about that template we just placed. If I go into my templates here, I can go find that pavement typical one. And you can see the origin is here. And both my PGL points are 11 feet to the right and left of that origin point, and vertically constrained to 0. So this origin point will follow the center line of construction along the active profile, and so I'm in essence projecting that profile out to these PGL points. If I wanted to have a split profile or two different profiles, I would have to set up a point control within my corridor to control these points. You could do it horizontally and vertically, but for this we're just going to keep it at 11 foot, and that's about it. I have two 11-foot lanes in here and a 7-foot bike lane, and I have some pavement depths that I've set up here, and you can see along the top we have a top mesh element, and along the bottom we have a bottom mesh element, and I've set up these curb points so that this will go from the bottom of the curb, follow the bottom of the pavement, or bottom of the base, and hit up to the bottom of the curb again. And these will be especially helpful once we get to our 3D deliverables, so that we can create model files that just have a top and bottom mesh and create a tin file from those. So that's about it from there. So you can see in this 3D view we have this white. Sometimes it's a good idea to just turn off that top and bottom mesh. You can kind of flip this around, and we can see that we have created our lanes. So you can see our travel lanes, our bike lane. And if you wanted to do a dynamic section of that, we can go and select our center line. I'll just do 100 foot left, 100 foot right, and then I'm going to hit end to get off the locked station, and then I'll just type in 170 to come to a station. You can choose whatever interval you want. Select your open view, and that will show us our pavement. Down here you can, I like to center on offset so I kind of stay more zoomed in. Change this vertical exaggeration to 2 to more kind of matches what we have in our cross sections typically, so it'll give you a more typical view that you're used to seeing. And you can just kind of flip through and see how your pavement sections look. So that's pretty much it for creating our pavement. So this pavement corridor is going to dictate kind of everything else that we do. So we'll move on to the next thing here, which is going to be the medians. Alright, now I'm here in my median modeling file, and I've attached my pavement sections and set up all my views the way I want it to look. So we're going to kind of follow that same workflow, and I want to show you the median template that we're going to use so that you can see how similar it is to the pavement sections, how it's going to kind of fit right in those pavement sections. So what we have here is our median. So we have the same CL null, and we have our pavement that sits out here at -11 and 0. So it's constrained to this center point. So same thing as with the pavement sections, it's just going to follow that profile and basically project it out to 11 feet. So we'll draw our E curb. We have our inside E curb so that the gutter slope is matching the edge of pavement slope, and if we need to, we can come in and set a parametric constraint to be able to change that gutter slope if this ever changes. And then we just have our 4% up and down for our median. Pretty simple. So we're going to kind of follow that same thing. We're going to go to our center line here, create corridor, reset for active profile. I'm going to call it State Road 100 median. I'm going to go find that template. And we're going to snap to the same limits as our previous template, our previous corridor. Do a 10 and pop that in there. So then I can come in here and turn off my top and bottom mesh so you get a little cleaner view. And we have our median. So you can see that median is following that edge of pavement line. We got our crowned median. Everything's drawn. Looks pretty nice. So one thing that we're going to end up doing is creating a median opening. When we come back and get to this side street here, we'll have to figure out our control radii for our turns and figure out where those median noses are going to end up. So that's something we can do pretty easily once we figure that out. But right now we have our corridor and templates set up for our median. Before we start working with some of our end conditions and side streets, I want to create a file that I found really useful. And what this is a projected pavement file. So I'm basically going to create a dummy surface that projects my pavement out beyond the normal edge of pavement limits, as well as towards the median to give me a crown. And I found this really useful when I'm creating my side streets or when I'm trying to detail model a median. So I want to show you how to set that up. So I've attached my pavement corridor or my pavement model here just so I can get my limits. I've gone ahead and just turned it off in the 3D view. And if we look at the template I'm about to drop, that template is pavement projection median full. So same setup as we're used to seeing, CL null with our left PGLs in, projected out 11 feet. And then I basically went and created this right pavement projected and left pavement projected out. They just extend 50 feet from that PGL at a 2% slope. And these are also able to be adjusted depending on super elevation. So if I wanted to do that, I could just apply super elevations to these from my super elevation file. We're not worrying about that too much right now. Also, it's creating a median crown, so I'm getting a nice full surface here. So we're going to go ahead and create that. Same thing we've been doing. State road 100 pavement projected, and go find our template, median full, snap for our limits, and we've created a big surface for us to use. And you'll see how nice that is once we start doing some of the modeling for our side street. And probably won't be covered in this video, but we'll have a separate video that shows how to model a side street. So you'll see how useful that can be. Alright, now I'm here in my side street file, which I'm calling Rocket. What I'm going to do here is kind of get some of the existing edge of pavement set up as well as the center line set up. So what I've done is copied a few of these lines in from my topo file. So I'm going to turn my topo file off, and I want to make these normal microstation lines into smart lines, into intelligent lines. So what I'm going to do is select them, and I want to create a civil rule feature. I've already selected my construction lines white dash that I want to put them on, and I'm going to transform those and make them ruled elements. So now I can stretch these things out and start using them for some of my civil geometry. Oh, don't want to snap. So I know that this is going to be the outside of my road. I also want to set up my outside edge of pavement. So I know that I have an 11-foot median. So we're going to do a single offset partial. We're going to do an 11-foot median. I'm just going to make a line here. And another thing I want to do real quick is I want to kind of set up some boundaries for this thing. So it really helps keep everything in place. Like if you move something, it won't let your reference lines move around. I just like to do this. So what I'll do is I'll offset this about, let's say 100 feet, and we'll just say mirror yes. And then I'm going to use those boundary elements to lock and snap and rule these down. So now I need another 29 feet to the outside edge of pavement. 29. I don't need to mirror that. And then, so I know that's my outside edge of pavement. And I'm going to put in a 50-foot radius in here. So I'm going to change over to my pavement. And we're going to do pavement asphalt EOP. And arc between elements. And what I like to try and do is make sure I'm always following the south to north, west to east rule. So right now, north is up on this. So I want to make sure I'm going south to north when I draw this. Just kind of helps you keep organized when you're doing some of these things. So we'll have our returns. And let's just say I want to make this thing go 60 feet down here. So that's going to be my tie down point. I always find it's helpful to set up a tie down point that's a little farther than the actual PC of these. Just kind of helps you make sure you're ending or beginning your things on a tangent here. So we're just going to set this stuff up, and then we'll make complex out of them. So these are going to be my, once I get into my detail modeling, these are going to be my curb returns. So I'll have profiles along these, and we'll use those when we start doing our detail modeling. So I know this is also my center of my road, and it's probably a good idea for me to actually set up a center line of this for later when we start doing profiling and all of that. So to do that, I'm going to extend this another 10 feet just to give like a little boundary. And then I'm going to go ahead and select my alignment, center line. You can use baseline. I prefer to just use the center line rule for everything. Seems to work better with all the rules and everything. And I'm just going to do a single offset partial following that south to north. I'm going to snap to here. I snap to here so that I'm just a little bit beyond my limits so that when I look at this profile I can see the existing ground a little bit beyond where I'm tying down to get an idea of what kind of slopes I'm looking at coming in, or starting the profile. And then we'll just snap that to the center line where it's going to end. And so that gives me a nice even number, 110. So now that we have that, I want to start setting up some control radii. So I'm going to imagine that there's going to be a left turn that comes into here. So since we have an 11-foot median and we have 11-foot lanes, that left turn lane is going to follow this alignment right here. And for 45-mile-an-hour road, we're going to use a 75-foot control radius for our turn. And these don't really matter which direction you draw them because we're not profiling anything on them. They're more guidelines. So I typically like to imagine drawing them in the direction that the traffic is going to flow. So I'm going to make sure I snap to my dashed line in here just to be safe. And we'll choose 75. So that's kind of looks like it's setting my stop bar kind of far back. So we might end up changing that a little bit. Not a huge deal. That's something that you discuss in design and maybe figure out if you want to reduce this turn. And we'll see what this this other one looks like. Maybe we want to reduce it to try and even them up a little bit. So I know this one is just going to be 11 feet. And I'm just going to kind of snap it between these 2 points because I don't need that whole thing right now. So I'm going to skip back on that. Come over here and do my 75. And you can see we're a little bit higher up here. So just to make these a little more even, let's maybe come down to 65. So now they're a little bit closer. And the reason we set this up is so that we can come in and set up our median noses. So that'll be another detail modeling video we'll do to show how we're going to do all of our median nose detail modeling. So we'll have a median nose, we'll do all the pavement and all that stuff. But right now, we can go back to our median file and set it up so that we basically blank out this area in between here. So we'll do that next. Now we're back in our median file, and I've gone ahead and attached that rocket side street so that we can use the ends of those control radii to blank out this median. So I'll show you the corridor we're going to use, or the template we're going to use. Pretty much the easiest template you'll ever create because it's called blank and there's nothing in it. So really easy. We're going to use that to create an empty space between the corridor, or between the template drop that we currently have. So if I select this corridor, you can see that I have this template dropped, or template placed along this corridor for the entire limits. So I'm going to go ahead and place a new corridor, and we're going to use blank, snap it to these control radii, and I'm just choosing a drop interval of 2. It doesn't really matter. And you can see that it's split my initial template drop in 2 and put this blank in between. So I can just go ahead and delete this blank. And what I want to do here, just to make sure that the ends of these template drops still remain ruled, because right now they're not ruled to that end of that control radii, I'm just going to grab the end and snap there. Now you can see I got a rule. Same thing with this one. Snap, it's ruled. And that's it. Now you can see over here, turn our default lighting up a little bit here. And we can see we got a hole in here. So we can come back and do our detail modeling in there later. Now I'm in the first of my end condition files. So we're going to start on the left. And we've kind of broken up some of the model here as we've gone through, but the end conditions I think are the most important part to break out. End conditions are always looking for that existing terrain, that active surface. So whenever you make a change to your template or anything else that the corridor is dependent on, it's going to have to read that terrain and make all of the changes. So that's where a lot of your processing time is going to come from, is processing your corridors that have end conditions on them. So it's a good idea to make sure that you have your end conditions broken out into different model files, and I like to break mine out into a left and a right, and depending on the length of the job or if there's natural breaks, I might do, multiple end condition files just to reduce my processing time. So the template I'm going to use on the left is a pretty simple one. We're just going to put some F curb and a 6-foot sidewalk, 2-foot flat, and then we're going to tie down. So that's going to be this one right here, our curb and gutter type F, sidewalk, left. So we got our F curb. Now, it's important, there's going to be a lot of templates that I have that have this point called ref. So all of those are going to be templates that are going to attach to the outermost point on the previous corridor. So in this instance, we're going to attach that ref point to the right pavement EOP out, or left pavement EOP out on the pavement corridor. So we'll just it'll draw our F curb. You can see we have our top and bottom meshes drawn in here. We have a handrail element that'll come into play in case we need to drop handrail, and we're just going to tie at a 1-on-4. So we'll come in here, and it's going to be the same thing that we've been doing. We're going to create our corridor along our center line. click. Active profile, State Road 100, EC left, end condition left. And we're going to go find that curb, sidewalk left. Snap to the same limits. And I want to match my drop interval from before, which is 10. And you can see we haven't drawn anything. Well, we have. It's just sitting here because that ref point is running along the center line. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is grab our bucket again. We're going to go into our corridor objects, and we're going to create a point control. And I'm going to call it, we're going to snap our point control to our limits again. And I'm just going to call it ref. And let's bring this over. So the reason I like calling it ref, or anything for that matter, is it's really easy to find when you come into these drop downs. So I want it to do this both horizontally and vertically. And we're going to be looking for a corridor feature. So that means like one of these points on my corridor. So I'm going to start clicking through this. So both corridor feature. Now it's asking me to locate corridor. I've never really gotten it to work where I can like click on the corridor here, so I've always had to go to the drop down, which another reason to make sure that you are naming your corridors something that's easy to find and is descriptive. So I know my travel lanes. Now I can either do my drop down to find my feature, or I can just click on the feature, so my left pavement EOP out. Priority 1, that's pretty default. You can just click through the rest of these. And boom, we have our pavement, or our curb here snapped to our left edge of pavement. And we can turn off our top and bottom meshes. And you can see that we have some really nice looking curb and sidewalk with our tie down. We're tying down to existing. We've got a little cut there. So everything's looking pretty good. Now we'll move on to the right side. Now we're in our end condition right file, and I can show you the template. It's basically the same exact template that we had from before. We're just going to have a sidewalk right. So same exact template. We got our ref point, 6-foot sidewalk, F curb, 2-foot flat, 1-on-4s. So we're going to do the same thing. Create our corridor here along our center line, EC right, and choose our template. So this time I'm going to snap to here. Well, I can snap, doesn't matter what point you snap to, but we're on the right side, so we can snap to there. This time I want to stop and make a gap for my side street rocket here. So I'm going to snap to the PT of this and do my 10-foot drop interval. And again, it's going to draw it in the middle like we did before, which is fine. So we're going to continue here. I'm going to do another template drop. Snap to here, snap to here. Click through. So because we've had our pavement runs straight through here, we only need to set up one point control for this, which is basically the same exact point control we set up before. I'm going to do the entire limits. Call it ref again. Find ref again. You can see why ref is so helpful. So we want to do both. Corridor feature. Easily find my corridor I want to use. And snap to my feature. Click through. Let's turn off our top meshes. So I know it's kind of obnoxious to have that DTM top and bottom mesh, but it's really easy to turn off, and I think once we get down to getting to our 3D deliverables, that's going to be amazingly helpful in creating those 3D deliverables. So I would really stress trying to draw those in all your templates. So you can see we've created a pretty nearly complete model at this point. All we have left right now is our detail modeling. So that gets into a little more detail, obviously. So we'll have to create some median noses, like I said. We'll do the pavement, and we'll do our curb returns, and the pavement, and create corridors and curb ramps. All those things to make your model look perfect and have no gaps and all of that. So kind of going back to the beginning of this video, you can see how important it is to have a model plan, to appropriately name your files, to appropriately name your corridors, have all your templates lining up with appropriate names. And then if you have a model plan and you've taken appropriate notes, it's something that you can turn in when you get your model 3D reviewed, that the reviewer can go through your plan and easily follow what you've been doing. I think it'll allow us to have much better reviews and really give our reviewers a much easier time. So that's all for this video. We'll get into detail modeling on another video, but thanks a lot for watching this one, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks.